Welcome to Happily Ever After is just the beginning. Keeping your relationship not just together, but happy, and we mean truly happy, is part art and part science. You've come to the right place. Here's your host, Leslie Dories.
You know, as a marriage professional, I hear a lot of misconceptions people have about this very unique relationship. And one of the worst is when I hear one partner say that it's their job to make the other person happy. Now, this is a wonderful desire to want your partner to be happy. The mistake is in thinking that you can bring it about. It's just as unreasonable to make them responsible for your happiness. But that's what many couples try to do, day in and day out, with the end result being frustration, not joy. So I'm going to tell you, having a happy marriage is possible. And Laura Doyle, who is the author of The Empowered Wife, is here to share how you can do that without needing your spouse to even be on board. So, Laura, thanks so much for being on the show and talking about what we actually can do on our own to make our relationships great.
Oh, thank you, Leslie. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So in the first chapter of your book, you say that when you started practicing the 6 intimacy skills that the book's based on, that it was about you becoming your best self and that having your best relationship then followed. So how did you come to this wonderful conclusion, and why is it so important?
I came to that conclusion the painful, embarrassing way, which was by, just driving my marriage right into the ditch. I was the perfect wife, Leslie, until I actually got married, and then when I tried to tell my husband how to improve, right? I was going to help him be more ambitious and more tidy and more romantic, and I couldn't understand why he didn't want to spend any time with me. And he was actually more interested in watching TV than he was in even talking to me or even making love to me. So it was incredibly painful. But I knew what to do. I knew that I should take him to marriage counseling, and then the counselor could fix him, and then I would finally be happy,
yes.
Right? That's how it works.
Yes,
so,
fix my partner, and everything will be fine. I'm perfect, but...
That's right. That's right. I was not going to marriage counseling to self-examine. I was going as a dutiful, supportive wife. Well, my husband got fixed, and of course, as you already know, that didn't work for some reason.
That happens.
I know. There we were, complaining about each other for an hour a week, and we just were not getting any happier. So that was weird. Mm-hmm. And I really came very, very close. I was very hopeless at that time. I just thought he's never going to change, and I'm either going to be spending the rest of my life in a loveless relationship, or else I have to get divorced. And so I decided I would divorce him, and kind of, was making plans to do that. And then there was one big challenge, and that was that I was too embarrassed to get divorced because people had been to the wedding just not that many years before. And so in my desperation, I thought, I'm going to ask women who've been married for what seems like an eternity, which is 15 years.
Right. Well, that is a long time these days.
Yeah, I knew it. I think I'd been married, like 5 or 6 years. So I thought, oh my God, how does anybody ever make it that long? So I started asking them for their advice on how to have a happy marriage, and the things that they said to me didn't even make sense. I couldn't even understand them, and it was interesting looking back. My parents are divorced, so I was following a failed recipe. And just doing what I'd seen.
See what worked, and
I didn't get an example. Right, I didn't see a model of a working one.
And
I think
what a lot of people are faced with, or they're faced with the same thing that you're looking at as it either has to stay the same way and it's terrible, or I have to get out. They don't recognize that there's this other way of being.
There's a third way. There's indeed a third way, and it's the best option for sure. So, So anyway, I decided, just because I was so desperate to not be divorced, that I was going to experiment with all the things these women told me. That that was my third way, and I did. And as I'd been doing, if it worked, I kept it. If it didn't, I threw it out. And then what emerged was what I now call the 6 intimacy skills. Who knew it was skills, right? I thought you just grew up and fell in love, and then that was that. But
right. And love conquers all, and that's
and
all.
love conquers all.
Love is all we need, and all those other wonderful things. And it's there's actually things we can learn to make it better.
That's right. It's like driving a car. I can just imagine, like when I turned 16, somebody turned me the car keys and said, "Okay, go for a drive," with no driving lessons or anything. You would crash the car. And you'd go, "Wow, that's dangerous," and you'd be right. So, but just like making an omelet or driving a car, it's skill sets. So anyway, so the 6 intimacy skills are what emerged, and I just remember I'd been practicing them for a while, and then I just remember I came home, and as I walked through the door, my husband's face lit up, and he was happy to see me again, and that had been gone.
Right.
And I thought, wow, I might be onto something here. So, and part of it was,
right?
Yeah, part of it was that I could no longer control my husband. That was a big part of where I'd been going wrong. And so I thought, okay, I get that. I can't do it. I'm going to just control my girlfriends. I will tell them what they should do in their relationships, Mm-hmm. And so I ended up with like a little support circle in my living room where we were all practicing these intimacy skills, and we saw these miracles. Like one woman said, her husband won the sales contest at work and took her on the most romantic trip of their lives. And another one, some of it sounds simple, but like another one said, we'd been arguing for months about, I just wanted him to paint the family room, and he got up one day and said, I'm going to paint the family room, and he did. And so, sometimes I'll feel like the goals were, are lofty. Like I wanted my husband to desire me. I wanted to feel loved. I wanted him to just tell me how beautiful and special I was. And then I also just wanted him to take out the trash. There was this other part.
There's that.
Yeah. So sometimes the goals are kind of everyday pedestrian goals, I guess. But anyway, somebody asked me to.
But you also said that when you were talking with your girlfriends and you said something really critical, because you said sometimes they seem really simple. Now, what I always tell people is simple does not necessarily mean easy. And I think
that's for sure.
And the first step, and this is when I read this, I thought, wow, she must get a lot of pushback on this, because I get this all the time. And the first intimacy skill you talk about is replenish your spirit with self-care. And so a lot of people first are going to go, well, this seems counterintuitive to having a good marriage, that first off I'm taking self-care. And then I don't know if you hear all the women, but isn't that selfish to take care of myself?
That is exactly right. That is exactly what I hear every single day. And just also people say, oh, who has time for that? I've got kids, I got a house, I got a husband, I got a job. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to, in my, my practice, what I found was successful for me is just doing at least 3 things a day for frivolous fun. So not 30 minutes of cardio, 8 hours of sleep, and 5 fruits and vegetables, but more like a bath, a bubble bath, a cup of coffee, right? A piece of chocolate. I love to play volleyball, or I get a reliable high from walking around the block with music I love, and so whatever is just going to make me feel good, and that's the primary purpose of it, is for me to be happy, and that's because. And this is going to sound so simple when I say it this way, but it was, it's like being hit in the head with a coconut for me. Only happy people have happy relationships.
Yeah.
So if I don't make myself happy first, I give myself no chance of having a good relationship, because, when I was a miserable martyr, it kind of sounded like my mother on her worst day. It gave my husband no chance of feeling like he could make me happy. And it's super important to my husband that I'm happy, and I've actually asked thousands of men all over the world, how important is it to you that your wife is happy? And what's interesting is they all say the same thing. They say either, oh, it's extremely important, or it's the most important thing. In the UK, they say it's imperative. So we know that men, all these men have this hero gene, and their wives can trigger it, but it requires us making ourselves happy first. So just really taking responsibility that no matter what's going on, even if my husband's in a crummy mood, it doesn't mean that I couldn't go in the bedroom and look at the new shoes I just ordered or something, right, to make myself happy.
Well, and I think that, and when you talk about that, that brings up that saying, that cliche that makes me crazy when I hear it, because because I think it's done backwards, but the happy wife, happy life kind of thing, because it's almost like I have to make my wife happy, which nobody can do that. The wife has to decide to be happy. And in a lot of cases, they're actually resentful. And then being around a resentful person isn't really nice. I think, I can't remember which book it is that I was reading, but you were talking about this self-care. And I think one of the people you were talking to said, well, yeah, she folded the laundry. And you go, no, that's not self-care.
yeah, exactly. I'm like,
sure. That's not self-care. I mean,
exactly. Did that make you feel ridiculously happy folding? Yeah, right. And it's funny because as women, I think we are really...
but
right. We're so good at getting our to-do list done. Like, that's not going to be a problem. It's really, and so many times the day goes by and you look back and it's like all you did was take care of everybody else and meet all those obligations. But I love this story. I remember one woman, I think it might have been the same woman you're talking about actually, where she told me, she said, I could maybe do 3 things a week, for my self-care. That's the most I could do, because I just don't, I'm not keeping up with all my responsibilities now. I just don't have the time. Mm-hmm. But she agreed she was going to try to do the 3 things a day. And so I talked to her like 2 weeks later, and I said, how's it going with the self-care, with having frivolous fun? And she said, it's going really well. She said, it's expanded my time. And I was like, tell me about that. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, before I didn't have time to do everything I was responsible for, but now I'm doing these things that are fun, and I'm also getting everything else done. So it expanded my time. And I knew what she meant, because isn't it true that when you show up filled up and you're rested and you're happy, that you get more done and you have more to give?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, that's the flight attendant telling you, if you're traveling with somebody, put your own oxygen mask on first, because you're not going to be of any help to anybody if you're passed out in the aisle.
That's right. That's right.
But this is one of those things that women, I think it's more women than men, although I don't know how much men are doing of self-care, but I think they tend to be a little bit more or a little less guilt-ridden about doing something just for fun than women are, because we're constantly, having to, saying, well, I have to do this or it's not going to get done. And a colleague of mine said to me, well, if it hasn't gotten done, it wasn't a have to. If it had to get done, it got done. We conflate have to or need to with we think it should, which is not the same thing.
Yes, that's very true. That's exactly right.
But I love the idea of things expanding, because being unhappy or resentful takes so much energy, and I think people don't understand that.
Yeah, we have an abbreviation for it. We call it NET, N-E-T. It stands for needless emotional turmoil. And whenever you're feeling needless emotional turmoil, it usually means that you're trying to control something that's out of your control. And it is. It's the most draining thing. And it's so funny because, like when I said stop, when I learned to relinquish control of my husband, when I developed my world-famous system for doing that, my life emerged.
We'll address that in a little bit, because I think that's a really important thing. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just that in relinquishing control of him, suddenly, I got to write a book that became a New York Times bestseller. It's published in 19 languages in 30 countries. And, it was much scarier to do that and go on national TV and, be a speaker and all these things than it was to be the armchair critic of my husband's life. So I think in some ways that might have been my avoidance technique. I'll just take pot shots at him instead of showing up for the things that scare me about my life.
Well, and I think that's a lot of what you're talking about, and this whole thing about happiness being an inside job, because if it really is an inside job and I'm not happy, then there's no place else for me to go except a mirror. But if I can make happy be somebody else's job, then I'm off the hook.
Yes, exactly. I'm off the hook and I'm miserable, but I'm off the hook. So yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I have a colleague, his name's Terry Real, and he wrote a book called The New it The New Rules of Marriage? Anyway, I can't remember the name of his book, but in his book he talks about that we get to choose, how we feel. And I fought that for a while because it's like, well, something will happen and I'll get irritated. And it's like, I might not be able to control my initial reaction, but after that, it's a choice. I get to decide whether I'm going to keep chewing on this and making myself unhappy or going, no, let it go, or do something else. And and when I finally wrapped my head around that, I went, wow, that's really powerful.
It really is. It's something, too, to just not be distracted by whatever's going on around you, but to be able to find your happy place. It's like a superpower.
Right. But like you said, taking care of ourselves, being rested, doing stuff that's just enjoyable, and being in the moment, which, of course, now we have all the mindfulness and intention and all that, which is basically being in the moment, enjoying, stop worrying about tomorrow because it hasn't happened, quit, ruminating on yesterday because it's over, and we miss what's going on right now. And I really think that's a very difficult thing for our society right now.
Yeah, well, it's, we're all always on these journeys and I think it's like a journey of self-discovery and going back to really becoming my best self. And so marriage, having a successful marriage has actually been the best self-improvement program I've ever undertaken. I didn't know that's what it was going to be, but having that constant mirror of really reflecting back what I was bringing to the party, there's just nothing like it. I wouldn't, like Maya Angelou says, I wouldn't take nothing from my journey now, but it sure was painful at the point when I felt so lonely and unhappy in my marriage.
Right, and this is the point. And this is Happily Ever After is just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm here with the author of The Empowered Wife, Laura Doyle, and we're talking about the steps that you can take to create the loving and intimate marriage you want. And if you would like some help with this, I encourage you to take action now. You can send me an email or give me a phone call and take advantage of my free, no obligation, Create Your Happily Ever After Marriage Strategy session. You can reach me at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. Or you can call me at area code 919-924-0463. And, this is so important because, the idea of reflecting back what you bring into the relationship, like you were just talking about, Laura, is a step that people don't understand. They don't understand that what they have created, they have a part of. And so I want to go into that, to another step that you talk about, is restore respect. And, it's hard to love somebody or trust somebody that you don't respect. And so,
that's true. Yeah.
It's kind of like I hear all the time, and I'm sure you do. I hear some of the people say some things about their partners, and I'm just looking at them like, oh my gosh, no wonder you guys are in my office. But how do we restore respect? What is this about? What is this step about?
Well, you would have felt sorry for me, I think, when I came into your office in the past, Leslie, because I would have said, I do respect him except for the way he drives and the way he dresses, and I don't think he makes enough money. I really just had no concept of what respect looked like, and I think one of the things that I got confused about is I thought about respect as something you kind of have to give to an authority figure, like a parent or a teacher or a boss, right? So they're in charge of me, and I'm just a rebel through and through. I think a lot of us are, right? We have that, like, don't tell me what to do thing. And so if you think of respect as something you have to give to somebody, it's like, then that rebel kind of comes up and says, oh, I'll show you. And
right, I'm going to push back.
I'm going to push back, right. But really, respect is what happened naturally when I first fell in love with my husband. I married him because I thought, oh my gosh, he is so smart, he's so funny, he's so handsome, he writes amazing songs and sings them on his guitar to me, so it was natural for me to feel that respect at that time. And then there's some truth to that old hack that familiarity breeds contempt. And as I saw him make mistakes, I would think, yeah, I think I might be smarter than him, and I might know better how to do things. And so I started to operate from that. And so what's interesting is, it turns out that disrespect is actually pretty painful. And now that I live on the other side of it, so the times when I was criticizing my husband or correcting him or trying to teach him something, even just trying to teach him something, really the underlying message was like, I just don't think you can handle it. I had a man tell me yesterday, he said, even if my wife says, why are you working so much? He's like, gosh, you're questioning my judgment. You're acting like I don't really know what I'm doing, or I'm just like I'm being unreasonable. And for a man, that's very disrespectful, and respect is like oxygen for husbands. It's like oxygen. They need it so much. So it's interesting. Like I remember this one story. So one of the things that I learned to do is, I'm not perfect with respect now, but I'm much better. But if I am disrespectful and I notice it, I'm able to go back and clean that situation up by apologizing, and I use this magical phrase to do that. And that phrase I call it a cheat phrase. This is how to give yourself an unfair advantage in having a playful, passionate marriage. And the phrase I use is, and a lot of women say, oh my gosh, it's like sawdust in my mouth, but I'll say, I apologize for being disrespectful when and then I say the thing that I said or did, or, rolled my eyes or interrupted or whatever it was, right? Or question your thinking on that. And I remember one woman started doing this, and so she became, her eyes were open. She saw how disrespectful she was, how often to her husband, and so she started apologizing for being disrespectful every time she was disrespectful. And he turned to her and he said, you don't have to apologize every little time that you're disrespectful. And she said, you're my husband, and you deserve my respect. And she said, it's no longer okay with me to be disrespectful. She wanted to be a respectful wife. And so she said, so this is my way of reminding myself, being accountable for myself, that what I want to bring to our marriage is respect for the man that I chose above all others in the world.
And it's really important, because I think that we need to make this clear, that by being respectful doesn't necessarily mean I agree with you. It just means
no. Yes.
People have to get this. They think these aren't nuances. These are actually real differences. That I can disagree with you, but be completely respectful in the way in which I do it.
Yeah. You can totally not agree, but still honor his thinking. And that's exactly what happened in this story. That guy, he got something in his eye right then when she told him that she wanted to be more respectful. And he now brags about her to anyone that will listen about, what an amazing wife she is. And people say, I want my husband to talk about me the way that he talks about her. So it really does wonders, right, for creating this bond that we all want, that connection, that feeling of specialness.
And that brings up where I wanted to go, because when somebody says, I want my husband to talk about me like this, I really think that you hit this so on the head, and it's not in this book, it was in another one of the books you wrote, that you actually said, and I quote, when I was choosing control over vulnerability, I was doing so at the expense of intimacy. What I know now is that control and intimacy are opposites. And when I read that, I went, oh my gosh, this is so perfect. Because this goes to the heart of two of the other steps you talk about. Relinquish control of your man and reveal your heart with vulnerability. And those two things, I think, are a real challenge, but they really are at the heart of the intimacy and the love that we all so want in our lives.
That's so true. Yeah.
Can you talk? I've been reading a lot of Brené Brown recently, and this goes to the whole thing about her position about shame, and I think that when what you were talking about of the way you were approaching your husband and trying to correct him and tell him to do it your way, is there's a part of that's shaming him. And mentally,
absolutely.
That's like kryptonite to men. They don't like that. I don't think anybody
nobody likes it. Yeah, nobody likes shame. It's the lie that we're separate is what shame is. So I'm lucky that since I've written these books that I found out I'm not the only controlling wife. Thank goodness, right? Because it wasn't just me.
No, believe me, I can tell you it's not you.
It's not just me, right? Yeah. So it's good. And I actually, they're my favorite women to hang out with is women who raise their hand and say, "Yeah, me too. I have the same, same coping mechanism here." And one of those women is the amazing Kathy Murray, and I love her story of when she very first learned about the intimacy skills. She had been going to marriage counseling by herself every week for a year to complain about her husband, Doug. And they were sleeping in separate bedrooms, and they had been for at least 6 months. And it was her second marriage, and she just thought, she was really kind of getting close to divorce herself. And so she heard about the intimacy skills, and she thought, God, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to use one of Laura's cheat phrases with my husband, Doug.
Right.
So she had trained him to always ask her before he made any decisions, right? Because that's what controlling women do, and since men just want us to be happy, they would do that, right? They'll just check in. So he came over to her with the cell phone. He said, I need to know what you want me to do with the cell phone plan. We got to make a decision about the cell phone plan. And so she used this cheat phrase, which is very handy for relinquishing inappropriate control, and maybe you've trained your husband to do that for you. And so she just turned to him and said, "Oh, whatever you think, Doug." And he looked at her funny, and he was like, no.
Yeah, I'm not stepping into that minefield.
That's right. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get in trouble if I make the wrong decision here. So he asked her again. He goes, "No, I need you to tell me what you want me to do with the cell phone plan." And so she just repeated it. She said, "Whatever you think." And then she added, "I trust you." So this is very vulnerable of her, right? Because in her mind, it's really important that they not pick the wrong cell phone plan or whatever. So he went away and made that decision himself. And that night, he put his hand on her shoulder. And this is a house where there was a Cold War, and there was wall-to-wall hostility. And he put his hand on her shoulder and said, "You were so nice today." And tears just streamed down her cheeks. And she crawled into the same bed with him for the first time in 6 months. And she still gets tears in her eyes when she talks about this. It was about 16 years ago now, because she now considers Doug to be the man of her dreams, and she is horrified to think about what she would have given up had she not learned the intimacy skills and been able to create the kind of playful and passionate relationship she has now. So
Yeah, and control is always about our own fears of, and I see this, and we talk about this. I try not to use psychobabble because I really hate it, but I'll have people tell me, "Well, my husband can't do this," and I'm going, "I'm sorry. How do you know that?" Or what they say is, "If I don't do it, it won't get done." It's like, really? I mean, it's sort of like, how did your husband function before you came into his life? Now, in some cases, Mama did it, but that doesn't mean that they aren't capable. It's like, okay, is he able to get up and go to work, find his way to the office, and do what he needs to? I mean, it's like it's this idea that they can't. It's like, no, they just do it differently than you do.
Yes, and isn't that part of the excitement of there being two people in a relationship? Is it broadens your horizons? And maybe he does dress the kids in plaids and stripes, or he doesn't load the dishwasher the way you would have, or he, doesn't take the freeway, or and you would, or something like that. But
have you been living in my house?
Exactly, right? But that is part of the exhilaration of being married. I mean, I know for me early on, I probably should just save us both a lot of time and just marry myself because I wanted everything done my way.
Well, that's it, and I think we have to decide what matters. It's like, does it matter? Because my husband's my husband folds towels differently than I do. His mother, he folds them the way his mother folded them. I fold them the way my mother folded them. Does it matter how the towels are folded? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, really? Yeah.
Right. Well, I think it's just so hard to remember that in the moment sometimes, though, you know. And I know for me, without like a whole system, a whole set of instructions on how to relinquish that kind of control. Yeah, it's inappropriate. Yeah, it's silly. Yeah, it's costing me a lot in terms of having a happy marriage. And yet I just couldn't. I remember, you know, my counselor saying, yeah, just stop being so controlling. And that just wasn't helpful for me because I had such a long-standing pattern. In fact, like you folded towels like your mom, I controlled like my mom.
Right. You need to be given some tools. And I think that's one of the ways that my profession lets people down, and I don't do this because people come to me because they want some practical skills. They want to know, how do I do this? And you know, being left to their own device, if they could solve this on their own, they wouldn't be coming to me. So,
exactly.
So it's really not helpful to just tell somebody to stop doing something. It's like, well, I would if I knew what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's just helpful to have all the cheat phrases and the tools. And, you know, for me, it really kind of takes a big community of like-minded women really standing for the possibility that I can be the kind of woman and wife that I want to be. And it's just gone such a long way towards restoring my dignity and my self-confidence. And it's been amazing to feel loved, so loved every day for, you know, I just celebrated 28 years of marriage, and I'd say for the last 18, I just live in this amazing space where my marriage is my soft place to land, and to be here that I'm special and beautiful and amazing. I love that.
Which is what we all want, and I think that this step, and we didn't get a real chance to talk about it, but relinquishing control, and the reason why I wanted to talk about them together, in relinquishing control and is becoming vulnerable. It's recognizing that something might happen, but the problem is the only thing we can actually control is how we respond to what happens. We can't actually control what is actually happening. But that's very vulnerable to, you know, to say, okay, I have to stop trying to micromanage everything. Because one, it's exhausting, and two, it's not loving. Whether we're trying to micromanage our partners or our kids or, you know, our coworkers, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It's just the illusion of control. It's not real control, and it's actually very painful to be trying to control things all the time. I was tired all the time when I was doing that, and so it's been such a gift to have that lifted, to be able to release that inappropriate urge to control that which I cannot control.
Right. And so I can't believe, you know, we've run through this half hour so fast, and there's still so much I would love to talk with you about. But I want, you know, it's not a bad thing to leave wanting more. So can you please tell people where they can find your books and where they can find more about how to these six steps for greater intimacy?
Well, I have something fun going on right now. It's the Get Cherished Challenge. So it's at getcherished.com. Kind of like Got Milk, but it's Get Cherished. And
I
know. So if you go, you can read a free chapter of The Empowered Wife, of course, which lays out step by step the 6 surprising secrets for attracting your husband's time, attention, and affection. And we'll also send you an email every day, you know, where you can try and experiment in your relationship. And that's what I did, right? I started it with experimenting. So I'll send you like a cheat phrase or a little action you can try and see if you get a different response. And most of them are pretty counterintuitive, and also they're just like magically effective. So it's really fun to just kind of give them a try in your marriage. And we find that no matter how broken, whether you're separated or there's a divorce filed or there's an affair going on, it really is amazing that when the woman gets the intimacy skills, there's just so much hope that she can revitalize the relationship. It's not too late. And so you can get all that at getcherished.com.
Oh, terrific. And I just want to remind people that the key to a happy, successful marriage often lies in our own hands. Unfortunately, because someone else is involved, there's a built-in scapegoat. And so when things aren't going the way we like, we blame someone else. Hopefully today you've discovered another way, even if it may be a little counterintuitive, and you'll focus on the only person who can really make it happen, and that's you. So I invite you to keep listening and come back next week. And until then, stay loving.